I'm a guy who loves women.
How did a man born in the heart of conservative post-war America defy the norms of his time and become the mastermind behind one of the most iconic and controversial brands in history? A man whose life mirrored that of Jay Gatsby, filled with star-studded parties, riches, women, and fame. And how did it all come crashing down?
The day that you are willing to come out here with a cottontail attached to your rear end.
This is the electrifying story of Playboy. In the heart of a modest Chicago neighborhood, a young boy began a journey that would shape his extraordinary destiny. The local movie theater became a gateway to a world of endless possibilities, sparking his imagination and setting the stage for his future. For Hugh, movies were more than just entertainment. They were windows to a world of heroes, romance, and adventure. In those cinematic moments, he could become anyone, a daring hero or a leading man. As the theatre lights came on, a young Hugh Hefner left with a newfound sense of potential, feeling like the world was his stage, but the most important role was yet to come. He fell in love with a girl named Betty Conklin, envisioning a love story straight from the movies. However, destiny had a different plan. Betty didn't share his same feelings, and instead chose his best friend over him. This experience told Hefner all he needed to know, and from then on, he would rewrite his life's script and transform himself completely. Fast forward to college, where Hefner discovered his guiding light in the pages of Esquire, a groundbreaking men's magazine that dared to explore a wide range of men's interests. Esquire was a pioneer, the first of its kind, embracing men's diverse passions. In a world where reading and magazines were seen as women's territory, Esquire boldly challenged stereotypes. Esquire was like a key to a hidden world, bridging the gap between movies and real life. Reading it transformed Hugh's perspective on life, gaining him the confidence that turned heads and demanded attention. He then met a girl named Millie Williams, who seemed to understand Hugh and support his ambitions. A match made in heaven. Hugh would then encounter a groundbreaking study. A sexologist named Alfred Kinsey released a study that exposed a world of sexual experiences people were reluctant to acknowledge. Affairs, same-sex encounters, multiple partners. Kinsey's findings sent shockwaves across the nation. You see, back in the 40s, you weren't even allowed to show a man and a woman sleeping in the same bed together. So this study received a lot of attention. Kinsey's study stirred Hefner's mind, sparking a rebellion against conformity and a desire for truth. He started expressing his views in a college humor magazine called Shaft. He would question why his values around sex were any different from those that guided other facets of life. Hugh and Millie's relationship continued to blossom, and he was ready to take the next step, so he proposed to his high school sweetheart. However, a bombshell shattered the harmony they had cultivated. Millie had an affair, leaving Hugh in shambles. In an era of conventions, marrying the one you loved was paramount regardless of the complexities that lied beneath. So Hugh decided to tie the knot anyway and married Millie in the summer of '49. Fast forward 2 years to 1951, and Hugh found himself living his dream, working for his favourite magazine, Esquire. But the reality didn't match the dream. The magazine had evolved. Its essence morphed into something less resonant of what Hugh had come to love. It was more conservative and didn't spark any conversation. So after they declined Hugh's request for a $5 raise, he quit. But Hugh needed money. After all, he now had a family to provide for. So he settled for a low-level role at a publishing house, crunching numbers in a sea of conformity. He now lived the scripted life: education, marriage, children, a stable job to support the family. There was little room for personal expression, a reality that clashed with Hefner's essence. He needed an escape from the chains of his life, so he took the local bar. There, he met a woman who captured his eye, and they had an affair. And in that moment he felt like he'd tasted freedom, a liberation from the chains that bound him. The affair reshaped his mind and his vision for himself. He refused to be stuck in a life of mediocrity and conformity. So from that moment, Hugh would embark on a daring venture. A magazine that would change the world. Hugh wanted a magazine that spoke to men, one that celebrated culture, art and music, one that pushed boundaries and went against the conservatism of the 50s. But just talking about sex wasn't enough. His vision was to expand beyond the limits, and that's when it hit him. A nude woman that graces the cover. Hefner brought his idea to his friend Eldon Sellers, who loved it and pitched in $2,000. However, $2,000 was far from enough. To put it into perspective, the initial investment for Time magazine was a staggering $86,000, and that was in 1923. In today's standards, that is over $1.2 million. Hugh believed he could get his magazine off the ground with only $6,000 more, so they continued to seek investors. Most declined, and only a few saw potential. After raising money from a few investors, his mother pitching in, and Hugh selling his own furniture, they came up with the funds they needed. Hugh had a creative genius on his side. Art Paul, a graphic designer with designs ahead of their time. So now they had the perfect trio of Art Paul's design, Eldon's marketing experience, and Hugh's vision. But now Hugh needed the wow factor, a look that had never graced the pages before. A blend of beauty, artistry, and allure. The perfect cover girl. A woman that no man would be able to resist. That woman was Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn was the embodiment of sexuality, a sizzling symbol of Hollywood's allure, the woman of every man's dream. But before the fame and the name, there was just Norma Jean Baker, a young model who once posed nude so she could make her car payment. The photo had never been seen by the public eye, and Hugh knew exactly who to get it from. With some bargaining, Hugh was able to get the photo and the full rights to print it for only $500. He now had the golden ticket to success. Now they just needed a name. Hefner originally decided to call it Stag Party. However, there was already a hunting magazine named Stag, and they threatened to sue him if he didn't change the name. With only 1 week to go before their deadline, Eldon remembered a car company that his mother used to work at called Playboy Automobile. Hugh loved the name, and they were off to the races. Soon 70,000 copies of Playboy were heading to every major city. Hugh was nervous if it would sell or not. In the first 2 weeks, nearly 80% of the 70,000 they printed were sold, and Playboy became the talk of the town. Before long, Playboy was able to expand and move into its own offices. Calls from advertisers came rushing in, and Hugh Hefner was on the path to greatness. Hefner's local fame quickly spread across the country, and soon everyone knew who Hugh Hefner was. He started getting offers to be on television and to have his own TV show. Hugh wanted to create a show that was distinctive, something that no one had ever seen before. One that featured prominent celebrities and some of the world's greatest talent. And so, the Playboy Penthouse was born. Playboy's new show had an incredible lineup, from iconic musicians to comedians and celebrities, including the legendary Nat King Cole. Hugh was breaking barriers by having black artists front and center on his new show, and he received a lot of backlash. Broadcasters in the South threatened to cancel the show. But Hugh didn't give in to the backlash, and he continued on with his show, marking an unforgettable moment in Playboy's history. The show was a major success, and Playboy sales soared, selling 1 million copies monthly. Hugh wanted to embody all of what it meant to be a Playboy. So he divorced his wife and bought a 40-bedroom mansion in the heart of Chicago for $400,000, around $3.2 million today. And what started as his house soon became the hottest spot in Chicago. The parties were jaw-dropping, and it had become the epicenter of the rich and famous, filled with celebrities such Sammy Davis Jr. and Frank Sinatra, to name a few. But Hugh wanted more than just huge parties. He wanted to give people an exclusive experience that you couldn't get anywhere else. Something that was a living embodiment of the Playboy lifestyle, where people could step in and experience the fantasy. And so the next chapter of the Playboy legacy began. The Playboy Clubs. The Playboy Clubs created a luxurious and sophisticated atmosphere where patrons could enjoy fine dining, live entertainment, and social interactions in an environment that embodied the Playboy lifestyle. Hefner envisioned waitresses who would personify the essence of Playboy: elegance, allure, and charm. So the team came up with the bunny costume, a look that would soon become iconic. The bunnies were held to the highest standards, as their every move was an embodiment of the Playboy brand. The Playboy Club's success was undeniable, featuring some of the world's most legendary musicians such as Ray Charles, Aretha Franklin, and Sam Cooke. Hugh then expanded the club to New York, but New York was full of corruption, and Hugh would find himself having to bribe officials just to get his club up and running. This would result in a criminal investigation in which Hugh would end up testifying against the city's corruption. As Playboy continued to grow, Hugh got another brilliant idea. He wanted to have interviews with the most influential figures at the time, so that audiences could connect more to the brand. The interviews explored profound topics, and Playboy was even able to get interviews with civil rights icons Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. This proved to be a tremendous hit with viewers, although it did receive some backlash from the South. Playboy continued to thrive, and it seemed as if the sky was the limit. Until a surprising event threatened Hugh Hefner and all of Playboy. In 1963, Hugh Hefner would find himself being arrested and charged with obscenity. Hefner published photos of actress Jane Mansfield lying in bed completely nude while a man was present. This was deemed obscene and suggestive by prosecutors. This put immense pressure on both Hugh and Playboy. Hefner refused to back down and fought for his freedom of expression. And the trial ended with a hung jury, and Hugh was free to go. However, that was only the beginning of the downfall of Playboy. A new publication called Penthouse would become Playboy's biggest competition, and they forced Playboy to push the boundaries of showcasing their playmates. Penthouse revealed more to their audience, showing women all the way down to their pubic hair. This made Hugh uncomfortable, but to keep up with the changing times, Hefner had to give in. This would cause a great outrage from women, and the women's movement attacked Hugh and Playboy for degrading and objectifying women, tarnishing the company's image. Hugh tried to defend himself, but it seemed to only do more harm than good.
The day that you are willing to come out here with a cottontail attached to your rear end, you make them look like animals. Yes, women aren't bunnies, they're not rabbits, they're human beings.
All right.
The women's revolution's attack on Playboy continued for years. But that wasn't nearly as bad as what would happen in 1974, where the worst tragedy of all struck Playboy. Hugh's #1 assistant, and huge part of Playboy's operations, Bobby Arnstein, was charged with drug trafficking. This put a lot of heat on Hugh and Playboy, but it was really her boyfriend who was the one who was involved. However, the FBI wanted to take down Hugh Hefner. Hugh wasn't popular with the FBI, and they had been after him for quite some time. So they wanted to accuse Hugh of running an entire drug trafficking operation and wanted to do whatever they could to arrest him. They tried desperately to get Bobby to give dirt on Hefner in exchange for a light sentence. However, Bobby stood up for Hugh and Playboy. She was sentenced to 15 years, and soon afterwards, she would take her own life, leaving Hugh and Playboy in devastation. Hugh permanently left Chicago and moved to Beverly Hills and bought a new mansion, which would soon become the destination for Hollywood's elite. Competition was rising, which forced Playboy to keep pushing boundaries. Hugh became stressed out, and so he took a back seat in the company and hired someone to manage operations. He then married one of the playmates. Hugh tried to live the reserved married life, but it wouldn't be long before Hugh would find himself back in the spotlight in the early 2000s. Reality TV was taking over, and Playboy magazine couldn't compete with the internet. So Hugh decided to start his own reality TV show, which was a major hit with the female audience. Hugh would remarry again to another playmate and lived out the rest of his years with her in the Playboy Mansion. Hugh died in 2017 at the age of 91. He was buried right next to Marilyn Monroe, a spot that he had purchased decades earlier. A fairy tale ending, it seemed. However, following the death of Hugh Hefner, many women began to speak out against him and the horrors of the Playboy Mansion.
You had a 9 o'clock curfew. You weren't really allowed to leave unless it was like a family holiday.
Every week we had to go and ask Hef for our allowance.
They released a documentary series called The Secrets of Playboy that gained a lot of media attention, talking about the abuse that went on in the mansion. How Hugh would force the playmates to take drugs such as Quaaludes so that they would get in the mood to have relations with him. He would call the drugs thigh openers. It was also said that Hefner's friends set up mini Playboy mansions where young women were drugged, assaulted, and videotaped.
It was called Pig Night, but we as butlers were always told, do not call them pigs. This was Hefner's term for them.
I felt like I was just in this cycle of gross things and I didn't know what to do.
But to wrap up everything, Playboy was more than just a magazine. It became a symbol of a changing world. Hefner was the driving force in the sexual revolution, and if not for Hugh and Playboy, the world would be a lot different. Now, whether it would be better or worse, I'll let you decide that. But thank you for watching. And if you enjoyed this journey, feel free to subscribe. We'll be diving into loads more of exciting stories, only on Behind the Scenes.